Okay, so this is the third video in the series of video lectures for chapter number 13, interest rate derivative instruments, and we will talk about interest rate swaps in this video. So interest rate swap have two parties. The dollar amount of interest rate payments exchange is based on some predetermined notional principle. The dollar amount each party pays to other is agreed upon periodic interest rate times the initial principal. The two parties only share the interest payments, not the notional principal. In the most common type of swap, one party agrees to pay the other party fixed interest payments as designated days for the life of the contract. This party is called the fixed rate payer. The fixed rate that the fixed rate payer must make is called the swap rate. The other party who agrees to make interest rate payments that float with the reference rate is referred to as the fixed rate receiver. The reference rate that has been used for the floating rates in an interest rate swap are those on various money market instruments, including treasury bill rate, LIBOR, which is the London Bank offer rate, London interbank offer rate, commercial paper rate, bankers acceptance, certificate of deposit, federal fund, and the prime rate. The most common is the London Bank rate, LIBOR. LIBOR is the rate at which the prime banks offer to pay on euro-dollar deposit available to other prime banks for a given maturity. Basically, it is viewed as the global cost of bank borrowing. There is not just one rate, but rates for different maturities. So we have 1 month LIBOR, 3 month LIBOR, and 6 month LIBOR. To illustrate an interest rate swap, suppose we are talking about now this figure here. Suppose that for the next 5 years, party X agrees to pay party Y 6% per year. So swap rate is 6%. Party X is the fixed rate payer, while party Y is the fixed rate receiver. Assume that the notional principal is 50 million. So the notional principal is 50 million, and the payments are exchanged every 6 months for the next 5 years. So semi-annual payment for 5 years. This means that every 6 months, party X, which is the fixed rate payer, will pay 1.5 million to the party Y, right? 1.5 million to the party Y. The amount that the party Y, which is the fixed rate receiver, will pay to the party X will be 6 month LIBOR times the 50 million divided by 2. So 6 month LIBOR times 50 million divided by 2. If 6 month LIBOR is 5% at the beginning of 6 months, party Y will pay, let's suppose, 1.25 million. Mechanically, the floating rate is determined at the beginning of the period and paid in arrears. That is, it is paid at the end of the period. The two payments are actually netted out so that 0.25 million will be paid from party X to party Y. Note that we divide by 2 because 1/2 year's interest is being paid. So basically what is going on is fixed rate payer is paying 1.5 million, fixed rate receiver is paying 6 month LIBOR divided by 2 times 50 million. So if it's a 5%, it will be 1.25 million. So you net out the amount. So now fixed rate payer have to pay 0.25 million to fixed rate receiver. So it's a simple swap contract, right? The conventions that evolved for quoting a swap rate is that a dealer sets the floating rate equal to the reference rate, and then quotes the fixed rate that will apply. The fixed rate is the swap rate and reflects a spread above the treasury yield curve with the same term to maturity as the swap. The spread is called the swap spread, as we have discussed many times. Entering into a swap and a counterparty risk. Interest rate swap are OTC instruments, so they are over the counter. This means they are not traded on an exchange. An institutional investor wishing to enter into a swap transaction can do through either a securities firm or a commercial bank who deal with them. These entities can do one of the following. So they have two options. One option is they can arrange or broker a swap between two parties that want to enter into an interest rate swap. In this case, the security firms or commercial bank is acting in a brokerage capacity. The broker is not a party to swap. The second is that they take position by themselves. So now they are one of the party in swap. This means the securities firm or commercial bank dealer rather than a broker in the transaction. Is a dealer, right? So they are no longer a broker. So they are now the other party. Acting as a dealer, the securities firm or commercial bank must hedge its swap position in the same way they hedge their other positions. If an institutional investor entered into a swap with a swap dealer, the institutional investor will look to the swap dealer to satisfy the obligation of the swap. Similarly, that same swap dealer looks to the institutional investor to fulfill the obligation as set forth in the swap. The risk that the two parties take on when they enter into swap is that the other party will fail to fulfill the obligations as set forth in the swap agreement. Again, this is the bilateral counterparty. So both parties face the same kind of risk. Risk return characteristics of an interest rate swap. The value of interest rate swap will fluctuate with the market interest rate. In interest rates rise, the fixed rate payer is receiving a higher 6-month LIBOR. In our illustration, he would need to pay more for the new swap. Suppose that interest rate change immediately after party X and Y in our example enter the swap. First, consider what would happen if the market demanded that in a 5-year swap, the fixed rate payer must pay 7% in order to receive 6-month LIBOR. If party X wants to sell its position to party A, then party A will benefit by having to pay only 6% rather than 7%. Party X will want some compensation for this benefit. Consequently, the value of party X position has increased. That is, interest rate increase, the fixed rate payer will realize a profit and fixed rate receiver will realize a loss. Next, consider what would happen if interest rates decline. So say 5%. Now 5-year swap would require a new fixed payer to pay 5% rather than 6%. If party X wants to sell the position to party B, the latter would demand a compensation because the party B now will be paying 6% rather than 5%. In other words, if the interest rate decline, that fixed rate payer will realize a loss, while the fixed rate receiver will realize a profit. So it's basically straightforward. Now let's discuss how to interpret these swap positions. So there are two ways we can interpret it: is a package of forward contracts or a package of cash flow from buying and selling cash market instruments. First, let's consider a package of forwards or future contracts. Sorry. Contrast the position of the counterparty's interest rate swap we summarize to the position of the long and short interest rate future forward contracts. The long future position gains if the interest rates decline and loses if the interest rate rise. This is similar to the risk return profile of a floating rate pair. The risk return profile for a fixed rate pair is similar to that of a short future position. A gain if interest rate increases, a loss if interest rate decreases, right? So the risk return profile of a floating rate pair is similar to that of a short future position. So short future position means you are selling the future. By taking a closer look at the interest rate swap, we can understand why risk return relationships are similar. Consider party X position in our previous swap illustration. Party X has agreed to pay 6% fixed rate and receive 6% of floating rate LIBOR. More specifically, assuming 50 million notional principal, X has agreed to buy a commodity called 6-month LIBOR for 1.5 million. This is effectively a 6-month forward contract where X agrees to pay 1.5 million in exchange for delivery of 6-month LIBOR. Now, if interest rate increase to 7%, the price of that commodity is higher, resulting in a gain for fixed rate payer, who is effectively long 6-month forward contract on 6-month LIBOR. The floating rate pair is effectively short a 6-month forward contract, 6-month LIBOR. There is therefore an implicit forward contract corresponding to exchange, each exchange date. While an interest rate swap now we can see why there is a similarity between this relationship of an interest rate swap and a forward contract. If interest rate increased to say 7%, the price of the commodity 6-month LIBOR increased to 1.75 million. 7 times 50 million divided by 2. The long forward position gains and the short forward position loses. If interest rate decline, the short forward position gains and long forward position loses. Right? So I hope it's clear. Right? Consequently, interest rate swap can be viewed as a package of more basic interest rate derivatives such as forwards. The pricing of interest rate swap will then depend on the price of a package of forward contracts with the same settlement dates. We will make use of this principle in next chapter. While interest rate swap may be nothing more than a package of forward contract, it's not a redundant contract for several reasons. So it's not an unnecessary contract. Why? Because first, maturities for forward and future contracts do not extend out for those of an interest rate swap. An interest rate swap can go as long as 15 years. Second, interest rate swap is a more transactionally efficient instrument. By this, we mean that in one transaction, an entity can effectively establish a payoff equivalent to a package of forward contracts. The forward contracts would each have to be negotiated separately. Third, an interest rate swap market has grown in liquidity since their introduction. Interest rate swap now provide more liquidity than forward contracts, particularly long-dated forward contracts. Okay. Then we also said it can also be interpreted as a package of cash market instruments. So how it can be interpreted as a package of cash market instruments? To understand, let's consider these transactions. Buy a 50 million power of a 5-year floating rate bond that pays 6-month LIBOR every 6 months. Finance the purchase by borrowing 50 million for 5 years on terms requiring a 6% annual interest rate payable after every 6 months. As a result of this transaction, the investor receives a floating rate every 6 months for the next 5 years and pays a fixed rate for every 5 years. Next 5 years. What about the position of the floating rate pair? It's the reverse. It can be easily demonstrated that the position of the floating rate pair is equivalent to the purchasing a fixed rate bond and financing that purchase at a floating rate, where the floating rate is reference rate for the swap. That is, the position of floating rate pair is equivalent to a long position in fixed rate bond and a short position in the floating rate bond. I hope it's clear. Okay. Describing the counterparties in the swap agreement. So in the swap agreement, there are two counterparties, fixed rate payer and fixed rate receiver. Fixed rate payer pays a fixed rate in the swap and receives floating rate, is short in the bond market, has bought a swap, is a long swap, has established a price sensitivities of a long-term fixed rate liability and a floating rate asset. Pays floating rate in the swap, receives fixed rate on the swap, and the long in the bond market, has sold a swap, is short-term swap and has established a price sensitivities of a long-term fixed rate asset and a floating rate liability, right? So I hope this swap thing is clear. Thank you.